Hmm. Mhm. That was part 2. Did I not? Hold on. Did I never post about the other one? I guess not. No. God damn it, Twitter. Fucking hate. Fucking hate this shit. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Just give me a second. I'm advertising my stream.
You're all good.
Do you have a? Okay, you do have a Twitter. I'm gonna tag you in my announcement post if that's okay with you.
Sounds fine to me.
Okay. Um, image. Get the template image. Oop, there we go. And hopefully people show up. I wonder, am I allowed to advertise in the QC? I'm not actually sure.
I'll ask in mod chat.
Go for it.
Um,
Um,
at what are we called? What are we? What are we? We're server staff. At server staff.
that's right. You're a server
And
staff.
videos. Advertise. The Latour reading. See. Let's see if we get a quick comment.
Let's see. While we're waiting, I'm gonna wait for a couple of people to show up. I'll just play Minesweeper while I'm waiting. Um, this is always what I
This is
do.
actually. Oh, I should also probably. It'd probably help if I got the PDF up.
Yeah, that would be that would be a good idea.
That would be really good. That would be really good. Oh yes, there's the share your work section,
Okay, cool.
so you can. Yeah.
There it is. Let's do that. Um, and Envy covering some more Latour. You there will be doing the
Okay. This what?
There we go. Um. Anyway, hello, Pippa. Um. I'm just gonna finish up this game of Minesweeper, and then we will get started. Um.
Sounds good.
This is it's a very nice secondary activity to just play a Minesweeper. It's what I do when I'm watching videos on stream. Is I play Minesweeper to have something to do with my hands, basically. It's mechanical enough that I don't really have to think too hard about it, which is nice. Oh, hey, look, it's forced guess. And it's only a 1 in 3, so let's see. Nope. Ah, well. All right, that'll be it for now. Let's switch over to here and then. All right. Um, yeah, welcome back, everybody. This will be part 4 of On the Modern Cult of Factish Gods. I'm once again joined by Envy. Envy, if you want to introduce yourself again, um, plug your channel, anything like that.
I've just been reading Latour lately, and
Oh,
I've been reading a lot of Latour for going on 2 years now, and I know quite a bit about it. Actus Gods is where I started,
mm-hmm.
and yeah, I know a lot. I have a little channel where we're going over
Mm-hmm.
another Latour book called The Politics of Nature, and that's what we're doing.
Yep. And if you're enjoying this stream, you will very much enjoy Envy's as well. Um, so you should go check her out on her YouTube channel. It should be tagged in the title this time. Last time I set it up through OBS and it didn't tag, but it should be tagged now. So go subscribe. Uh, and without further ado, let us begin. So, as per usual, I'm going to try to summarize the previous section that I read just to make sure I'm retaining the information. Um, so the previous section, more or less, was I think Latour's attempt to extend his analysis of the in the previous chapters to domains outside of the usual ones like religion and science. Um, and so he draws on examples from artistic creation and from politics. So with respect to writing, he talks about how uh, you know when a writer writes something, um, they are doing the same. Uh, they are making the same passage between fact and fetish that the researcher or the scientist does. Um, and he has a very interesting passage about how the author writes and then in writing knows what they are thinking after they have reread it, um, which is a very interesting idea. And I talked about how it kind of resonates with me um, personally. And then he gives another example with politicians and specifically the difference between creating and representing a constituency is, I believe, how he put it. Um, is it a real constituency, or is it a constituency that the politician is creating from whole cloth? Um, and how to the politician as an ordinary actor, there is no such difference. These are one and the same thing, but from the perspective of theory, quote unquote, we have this double repertoire. Um, yeah. Do you think, Envy? Do you think you have anything to add to that? Anything to correct on my part? Anything incorrect I might have said?
I think you did a pretty good job.
Okay, awesome. Um, in that case, I will start reading the next section, which is how to portray an anti-fetishist. And I guess just to see. Or did we read this one already, or was I believe no, we didn't. This is the next
No,
one.
we didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's no highlights. Just to like read the last sentence or so. Um, of the last section, it says, "We shall now use the word belief for the process that allows one to keep an official theory at the farthest possible distance from its informal practice, without any relationship between the two except for the passionate, anxious, and meticulous care taken to maintain the separation. And we shall call the anthropological description of that process agnosticism." And this is what he's going to elaborate on here. Is in this next section is the anthropological description versus the practical separation of practice from theory. And thus we have how to portray an anti-fetishist. Um, Beginning. In order to grasp the mysterious effectiveness of this separation between theory and practice, we would need to have portraits of anti fetishists at hand. Then we could counter-analyze the moderns by preparing an ethnographic description of their iconoclastic gestures. So I take it that in this chapter he's going to give specific examples, which is good. I'm very fond of specific examples of things. Um, since to my knowledge, no studies of this sort have been carried out to date, and then this goes to a footnote. Let me see what this footnote says. Um, Art history could also offer a rich source of material for this historical anthropology of ancient and modern iconoclasm. See the following chapter. Okay, so we'll see that in the next chapter, which is I believe iconoclash, right? Um, yeah. So, anyway, since to my knowledge no studies of this sort have been carried out to date, I have chosen an enlightening anecdote from a contemporary Indian novelist. And then this goes to another footnote. Um, uh, Anantha Murthy Bharathipura. Bharathipura. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Do you know how to pronounce this, Envy?
No,
Okay. Fair
I
enough.
there's going to be probably a lot of words that you struggle with
Yeah. For a
in this
somewhat
section.
different treatment, see the last chapter of Bruno Latour, Pandora's Hope, Essays on the Reality of Science Studies. Um, have not read Pandora's Hope yet, but uh, have you read Pandora's Hope?
I've only read the first chapter.
Okay, so then you wouldn't have gotten to this one because this is the last chapter. Okay, well,
Yeah.
fair enough. Um, Jagannath is a Brahmin of the modernizing kind. He wants to break the fetishes and liberate the pariahs who work for his aunt from their alienation by forcing them to touch the holy black stone, his ancestors' shalagram, I believe. One late afternoon, after work, he seizes the stone from the altar and, in front of his horrified aunt and the priest, starts to carry it over to the serfs gathered in a corner. But in the middle of the courtyard, Jagannath hesitates. Oh, sorry, I pressed space and it. Yeah. Anyway, Jagannath hesitates at the prospect of what he is about to do, stops, and questions himself. And then this is quoting from the book. From the book, um, words stuck in his throat. This stone is nothing, but I have set my heart on it, and I am reaching it for you. Uh, yes, on it, and I am reaching it for you. Touch it. Touch the vulnerable point of my mind. This is the time of evening prayer. Touch. The Nanda Deepa is burning still. Those standing behind me, Jaganth's aunt and the priest, are pulling me back by the many bonds of obligation. Jesus. What are you waiting for? What have I brought? Perhaps it is like this. This has become a shallogram because I have offered it as stone. If you touch it, then it would be a stone for them. Thus my this thus my importunity importunity. Thus my importunity becomes a shallogram. Because I have given it, because you have touched it, and because they all have witnessed this event, let this stone change into a shallogram in this darkening nightfall, and let this shallogram change into a stone. What is a shallogram? I'm not 100% sure I know what that means.
It is literally a holy stone as it is like described.
Okay.
It is I we looked it up. It's supposed to be it's apparently I guess it's most often or maybe only a usually like a fossilized ammonite, and it's supposed to be the representation of Vishnu,
Okay.
and it's said to have like mystical properties.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's just from googling it. I don't actually know. Someone who knows more, but that's what I got from just googling it. But it is literally a like it's like a literally a holy stone. It is like it is like it's like kind of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Holy's kind of weird because it has specific connotations, but like
Yeah. No, I get it.
yeah,
And but no, I think I get the point that like this is outlining the passage between fetish and anti-fetish. Um, it says, "Because I have given it, because you have touched it, and because they have all witnessed this event, let this stone change into a shallogram, and in this darkening nightfall, and let this shallogram change into a stone." Like it's very explicitly uh, creating that passage between uh, object and fetish, right?
yeah,
And I think that um, this also, I think, uh, this gives me a kind of, it reminds me of performative acts as well. Um, in the style of someone like Judith Butler or any of the people that they were influenced by. I can't remember who specifically it was that talked about like speech acts, but the idea being that um there's a kind of instantiation of the thing through repeated social gesture, um, and that they become constituted this way. So, the stone becomes a shallogram, and the shallogram becomes a stone through this act. Um, but yeah. But to the great surprise of Jagannath, breaker of idols, liberator, and anti-fetishist, um, J.L. Austin. There we go. Thank you, Pippa. The pariahs back away, terrified. He remains alone in the middle of the courtyard with an object that is now half stone, half divinity, the priest and his aunt crying out in shame behind him, while those whom he wanted to free huddle as far away as possible from the sacrilegious sacrificer. And then quoting from the book again, Jagannath tried to soothe them. He said in his everyday tone of a teacher, "This is mere stone. Touch it and you will see. If you don't, you will remain foolish forever." He did not know what had happened to them, but found the entire group recoiling suddenly. They winced under their wry faces, afraid to stand and afraid to run away. He had desired and he had desired and languished for this auspicious moment, this moment of the pariahs touching the image of God. He spoke in a voice choking with great rage. "Yes, touch it." He advanced towards them. They shrank back. Some monstrous cruelty overtook the man in him. The pariahs looked like disgusting creatures crawling upon their bellies. He bit his lower lip and said in a firm, low voice, "Pila, touch it. Yes, touch it." Pila, the overseer, stood blinking. Jagannath felt spent and lost. Whatever he had been teaching them all these days had gone to waste. He rattled dreadfully. "Touch, touch, you touch it." It was like the sound of some infuriated animal, and it came tearing through him. He was sheer violence itself. He was conscious of nothing else. The pariahs found him more menacing than Buthariah, the demon spirit of the local god. The air was rent with his screams. "Touch, touch, touch." The strain was too much for the pariahs. Mechanically, they came forward, just touched what Jagannath was holding out to them, and immediately withdrew. Exhausted by violence and distress, Jagannath pitched aside the shalogram. A heaving anguish had come to a grotesque end. Aunt could be human even when she treated the pariahs as untouchables. He had lost his humanity for a moment. The pariahs had seemed to be meaningless things to him. He hung his head. He did not know when the pariahs had gone. Darkness had fallen when he came to know that he was all by himself. Disgusted with his own person, he began to walk about. He asked himself, when they touched it, we lost our humanity. They and I, didn't we? And we died. There is the flaw of it all, in me or in society. There was no answer. After a long walk, he came home, feeling dazed. Sorry, I want to circle back to um to this one. So it says, Aunt could be human even when she treated the pariahs as untouchables. He had lost his humanity for a moment. In, I guess, trying to create or in trying to dispel them of the fetish. In saying touch it, touch it, touch it, even as they recoiled. Interesting. All right. Before I try to think about that, I'm going to see what Latour says about this. Um, I guess yeah. I'm gonna see what Latour says about this, and then if I'm still confused, Envy, you can chime in. Um, yeah. The blow that Jagannath intended for the fetish, the idol, the past, the chains of servitude, has slipped. What now lies broken, dispersed, is not the fetish, but humanity, his own and that of the pariahs, his aunts, the priests. He thought he was breaking the fetish, but it was the factish that broke. At that moment, he became a savage beast, and the pariahs disgusting creatures. The stupid objectivity of the stone, what Jagannath wanted to have them feel with their own hands, passed into the serfs, who became, quote, things stripped of significance, unquote. Inverting the magical gifts of Midas in order to desacralize the shalogram, Jagannath made it an object that turns all who touch it into stone. He wanted to dispel the illusion of the gods, and, bitter irony, here he stands, more menacing than Buthariah. Buthariah, yeah. He only gets the pariah to obey him, finally, because they give in to the coalition of menacing divinities, those of the master added to that of the spirit demon. Even then, the serfs only obey him mechanically. Beasts, objects, machines. They go through all the shades of inhumanity. Even more seriously, master and serfs died because the factish, which once broken, can now no longer hold from the outside what made them human. Sorry. Because the factish, which once broken, can no longer hold from the outside what made them human. Where is the flaw? Jagannath asks himself. Does the human no longer live in the subject liberated from his chains, in the breaker of idols, in the modernizer with his hammer, but elsewhere, slightly elsewhere? Must one truly stay in the shadow of factishes in order not to die, not to become beast, stone, animal, machine? Does one merely need a stone in order not to become hard and cold like a stone? Okay, that's a lot. Hmm. So if I'm understanding this correctly, is the idea that by by trying to do this, this ritualistic anti-fetishism, he is doing a kind he's like objectifying the pariahs in a certain sense, because he says, um he only gets the pariahs to obey him finally because they give in to the coalition of menacing divinities, those of the master added to that of the spirit demon. Even then the serfs only obey him mechanically, beasts, objects, machines. They go through all the shades of inhumanity. So in and I guess in my reading, this would be objectification of a kind. And in order, I think what's being said here is that in order for this act to happen, he needs to invoke a kind of a fetish itself, that being the fetish of the master, um as that he, as their master, is invoking his authority as such in order to get them to obey him. And in doing so, he is like he is adding uh his own power onto this coalition of menacing divinities. um am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, I think so. I might phrase it a bit differently.
Sure. how would
Um,
how would you phrase it?
Kind of like what you said. The reason why they lost their humanity
Hmm.
is because the factish, this thing that held them together in a certain sense, even if it was like even if Shiganoth meant well, um it ended up being broken at the moment when they touched the stone. Especially when they touched the stone.
Hmm.
The Like he said, they all of them became inhuman in like every shade. It went through every shade of inhumanity.
Hmm.
They um the, the point is kind of that for and the point he's going to kind of make, and the one that's kind of appearing, is that we need the factish. You can't Destroying the factish makes us inhuman. But if you replace the factish with another factish, whatever you're doing with it, with another thing, that is a bit better, as I'm pretty sure the play he ends up making
Okay.
later on.
Hmm. Well, yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of what he, I guess, maybe is alluding to at the end. It says, "Must one truly
Yeah.
stay in the shadow of factishes in order not to die, not to become beast, stone, animal, machine? Does one merely need a stone in order not to become hard and cold like a stone?" Um.
Yeah.
So I think that, yeah. Hmm. I don't know. And then I guess, like, yeah. Jagannath sets out to remove the power of the shallogram, but his
Yes.
actions do the opposite. He ends up using the stone to turn the servants into beasts, showing that he has transformative powers. Okay.
Yes.
Hmm.
It does the opposite,
Well, yeah.
like with the uh earlier.
Yeah. So with the
Literally does the
yes,
opposite.
yeah,
It
with
it
the
invokes the
anti-fetishist.
power of the thing itself.
Yes. Uh, it in fact it double inverts. the power. So it has the power both to invert and also to invert the inversion, which is what gives rise to this, like, to the double denunciation. Um, he turns himself into a beast and them into machines. Well,
Yes.
it seems like he also it also says, is it not that the servants also go through these three stages? Um, because it seems like he's saying that or that Latour is saying that the servants also turn into beasts, right? He's saying even then the serfs only obey him mechanically. Beasts, objects, machines, they go through all the shades of inhumanity. Um, or is he saying that each of these respective parties to the event go through them separately?
All of they all do.
Okay.
Sorry, not all, they don't all do that, but he's describing what the shades they all go through.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, and that's the point. He ends up kind of, and in a way, in trying to free these people, he ends up chaining them more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he ends up chaining them more.
Well,
He
yeah.
doesn't
He
he
chains
doesn't
them.
break the thing he wants to get rid of.
Yeah. And I mean, like, he in fact, like, not only just by having them touch the stone and thus incurring any kind of social consequence that may come about from that, but also in his assertion of his authority as the master. He's also like imposing a kind of domination onto them, in
Yeah,
multiplying the fetishes, uh, not just the fetish of this object or the divinities, but also like of the position of the master over the pariahs. Um, is how I would understand it here. Yeah. So by choosing the wrong target, actually I'm going to highlight this in magenta just because I want to see how he elaborates. By choosing the wrong target, the modernizing Indian in us teaches us much about himself, but mostly about the whites. This is the lesson we need to learn. Okay, and that corresponds to 31. It says, on pariahs, see the admirable work by Virama, Life of an Untouchable. Yeah, okay. Yes. So by choosing the wrong target, the modernizing Indian in us teaches us much about himself, but mostly about the whites. This is the lesson we need to learn. If they are to be scholars, creators, politicians, cooks, priests, initiates, operators, artisans, butchers, and philosophers, the moderns have to pass, as everyone must, from construction to autonomy. If they lived without factishes, the whites could not live. They would be machines, things, savage beasts. They would be dead. So yeah, he is seemingly saying that the factish is is like a necessity, in a sense. But not necessarily this specific factish, but that everyone makes this passage, uh, and that like it's not avoidable, um, in any sense of the word, and that like attempts to avoid it just like redouble the power that you are trying to divest from it. Is that what he's getting at here?
yeah.
Okay.
He literally says at one point that without these things,
Hmm.
you couldn't love. You couldn't love somebody. It's like it's a the factish is a very huge thing for Latour. Like this idea that this happens is like a really big thing and a really important thing.
Hmm.
It is like a fundamental,
Yeah.
um, almost.
All the same, they are not required to believe in fetishes. They do not have to follow the horrible scenography of anti-fetishism as if they were attributing souls to stones. Everyone agrees that the salagram, uh, is this supposed to be shalogram? Have they just forgotten?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
it is.
All
Yes,
right.
it is.
Everyone agrees that the shallogram is just that, a stone and nothing but. Only the denouncer, the breaker of idols, does not know this. He finds out too late. He misinterprets the priest's horrified shouts and his aunts. Jagannath believes they are watching, aghast, a liberating blasphemy, but it is for him and him alone that they feel covered in shame. How could he attribute such awful things, such awful feelings to them? How could he accuse them of stone worship, such a monstrous idolatry? The priest, the aunt, and the pariahs already know what Jagannath discovers by his failure. It has nothing to do with belief. It is all about behavior. It is not about a fetish stone, but about factishes, about those off-center beings that allow us to live, that is, to pass continually from construction to autonomy without ever believing in either one, or in either, rather. Thanks to factishes, construction and truth remain synonymous. Once broken, they become autonomous, antonyms, rather. We can no longer pass. We can no longer create. We can no longer live. Then we have to set up factishes all over again. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, he seems. So it's interesting then. I guess what gives me pause then is how how we then come to say uh what factishes are. I don't know if I want to say good, but like I think certainly we can make statements about whether or not a given factish is actually like productive in some way, or properly represents the people involved. No, like I like the because I think what he's talking about here is like the Indian caste system, right? And I think the Indian
Yes.
caste system is like something that most people um would oppose, right? That that most people would think is not something that we should reinforce. But as he says, that like trying to dissuade them of idolatry is like choosing the wrong target, because it incorrectly assesses the state the of the people who are the fetishists, supposedly. So then how do we, I guess from my current perspective, like how do we then say which factishes should be replaced? Like is there an independent, or even like dependent way of differentiating between ones that are uh that are productive and like good for people, and ones that reinforce power structures, I guess. And I don't know if he touches on this much or not, but it's the question that comes to mind for me immediately. Uh,
Kind of does in the second part,
okay,
I think. The second part of this chapter.
okay,
Because it's very important that if you remember at the beginning,
hmm,
there's this is actually the first part of the chapter.
yep. All right. So thanks to Jagannath, their efficacy now becomes clearer. We started with the either or choice that required us to decide whether we constructed facts and fetishes, or whether, on the contrary, facts and fetishes allowed us access to realities that no longer has that realities that no one has ever made. We have observed that in actual practice, this choice is never made by anyone, and that everyone passes somewhere else on the sly and effortlessly, attributing both autonomy and human origins to the same beings in the same breath. To use the language of philosophers, no one has ever been able to distinguish between immanence and transcendence. This is something he said earlier as well. Um, but this stubborn refusal to choose always shows up, we now understand, as a simple practice, as something that can never be spoken or theorized, even if the actors themselves keep on saying it and describe it in luxurious detail. And this goes to 32, which says, as Michel Callan and I have often demonstrated, This amounts to generalizing an ethnomethodological approach by extending it into metaphysics by way of semiotics, the only organon we have at our disposal that can fearlessly maintain the diversity of modes of existence at the price, to be sure, of putting them into language and text, a restriction that we have nonetheless sought to overcome by extending the overly restrictive definitions of semiotics to things themselves. And so, once again, we come across the entities that had interested us from the start, under the vague heading of actor network, and that are at once real, social, and discursive. Okay. Do you would you mind giving your take on this footnote? Because I think I'm a little lost on what he means here.
Um, there is this guy. Let me look him up. Um, Garfinkel. His name's Garfinkel. I
Hmm.
found it immediately once I typed in ethnomethodology.
Yep.
Garfinkel is someone kind of important for a lot of what Latour does.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know exactly what the methodological approach is,
Hmm.
but he talks about it quite a bit. And I think it literally is. Sorry. Also, uh, uh, I guess I should ask, what are you confused about exactly?
Well,
What are you wondering about exactly?
I'm I don't know. I'm having a hard time, I guess, uh understanding like the how should I explain this? Like what he means here by well, first of all, I don't know what an organon is, but also what he means by extending the approach into metaphysics by way of semiotics. Um like what does he mean by that? He says that he's putting things into language and text, and thus uh
Okay,
that's like the price
I can
of doing
actually
it.
explain this
Yes, go for it.
quite easily.
Hmm.
Um, Latour talks about the felicity of conditions.
Hmm.
In this, he's explicitly bringing over from stuff like speech act theory.
Okay.
He is very much bringing it over, but he doesn't mean it necessarily in the exact same sense. He
Hmm.
means it in a very similar sense, but it is literally uh, uh, the way things. I don't know if I'm gonna say that. How things exist, like, is how I would say. I don't know exactly how to put it, but
Okay.
it is it is about their existence.
Hmm. Okay. Hmm. So an organon is an instrument, a technique of thought in philosophy. Um,
Yeah, when
this
I looked it up, uh, it's I got an instrument of thought, especially a means of reasoning, or a system of logic.
Mhm. Okay. So it's yeah. So as this amounts to generalizing and specifically. Okay, hold on. It says right. So, but this stubborn refusal to choose always shows up, we now understand, as a simple practice, as something that can never be spoken or theorized, even if the actors themselves keep on saying it and describing it in luxurious detail. Um, so the actors themselves, when they're just what they're describing here is in luxurious detail is the refusal of the choice, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and so. Oh, and in the refusal of the choice, so like describing uh or being able to hold on, this stubborn refusal to choose always shows up, we now understand, as a simple practice, as something. Okay, so he's saying that this refusal of the choice um is the ethnomethodological approach. Is that what he's saying? Because he's saying, you know, uh But this stubborn refusal to choose always shows up, we now understand, as a simple practice, as something that can never be spoken or theorized, even if the actors themselves keep on saying it and describing it in luxurious detail. And then he's saying, this, as in the refusal of the choice as described in luxurious detail, amounts to generalizing an ethnomethodological approach by extending it into metaphysics by way of semiotics. So by way
Well,
of, sorry?
I actually have a definition of ethnomethodology that I think will probably make this make a lot more sense to you.
Okay.
So ethnomethodology, I've never actually looked this up
Hmm.
because um didn't feel ever that important to understand, for me at least, what
Hmm.
Latour was getting at. It
Yeah.
is a method of sociological analysis that examines how individuals use everyday conversation and gestures to construct a common sense view of the world.
Okay. Yes, that makes sense. All right. So he's saying that by way of semiotics, he just means like language, symbols, that sort of thing, right? He's saying that in like people, when they are waxing poetic about their refusal to choose, they are delving into metaphysics by way of the symbols, uh like language, etc., that they have. Um, and that this comes at the price of putting into language, but that you can somewhat overcome this by extending your definitions of semiotics to include more than just, maybe what is generally understood by semiotics, like symbols and language and that kind of stuff. All right. Does that ring true?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I'm gonna write that down for myself so that I don't forget that. Um so this is an extension of ordinary actors into metaphysics by way of the tools that they have, that being semiotics. Um
While you're
semi
writing that,
Yep.
I'm going to read something that Pippa said.
Hmm.
Refusal to choose exists as an organon in ant. Nature, politics, discourse. Like Trinity discussed in We Have Never Been Modern. Yeah.
Okay.
In We Have Never Been Modern, there's um, sorry, and then Pippa goes on to say that is ant is the organon that we can employ in order not to have to choose,
Hmm.
not to have to
Okay.
choose between construction and reality, or between nature, politics, or nature and society and discourse.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and again, I still haven't read what was it, like, science, is it Science in Action? What is it? Society in Action?
Science in action.
Yeah. Whatever the intro text to Ant is, I haven't read that one yet. So, I can't really say much about Ant. Um and I believe I briefly talked about like the trickiness in defining, what are the individual nodes of like a network. Um, but I'll get to that when I get to that. Um, yeah. Anyway, continuing. The misdirected blow of the idol breaker, like the Felix culpa of science studies, will allow us to detect the course of anti fetishism definitively in order to describe the underpinnings of belief, from the outside. Hold on. Excuse me. All right. Right. It's reassembling the social. That's what I was thinking of. But reading Aramis is better. I don't know what Aramis is, but um actually, Envy, did you mention Aramis earlier? I don't remember. Oh, footnotes are still on screen. Thank you. Uh,
Yes, I did.
okay.
Yes, I did. Aramis is also an introduction to actor network theory, but it's an introduction by way of him like literally doing it himself, like him going about like an actual study while reassembling the social. It has some examples, but it is more abstract. It is about like it isn't going into like many examples as much. It's just explaining uh like the process itself.
Okay.
Um, while Aramis is literally the conceit of it is it's there's these two characters called the young engineer and Norbert, who is a like ant professor,
Mm-hmm.
and the young engineer and like that's the conceit of it,
Mm-hmm.
and it the young engineer is learning ant.
Okay.
Um,
Sorry, that's for Aramis, or that's for reassembling the social?
yeah,
Okay.
that's for Aramis.
Okay.
Reassembling
Aramis.
the social is yeah.
Right.
I think it's actually pronounced like Aramis.
Arami. Arami.
But we'll always pronounce it Aramis. So.
Fair enough. So, continuing, the misdirected blow of the idol breaker, like the Felix culpa of science studies, will allow us to deflect the course of anti-fetishism definitively in order to describe the underpinnings of belief from the outside. Symmetrical anthropology now has an operator, the factish, that will help it resume its work of comparing, but without losing its way in the meanders of cultural relativism and without believing any longer in belief. Interesting. Symmetrical anthropology now has an operator, the factish, that will allow us to resume its work of comparing, but without losing its way in the meanders of cultural relativism and with believing any longer in belief. So what does he mean by it being able to overcome cultural relativism? Because like I think from like a very superficial reading you could say like, oh, you are being culturally relativist because you're saying that the factishes of other cultures are no better than any other factish. So what about this is overcoming cultural relativism as he understands it?
Okay. Really easy. There's a footnote and reassembling the social that explains it very perfectly. Let me just pull it up real quick. I literally can get it in the fold. Sorry, the fold. It's just called the fold.
Hmm.
And I'll find it really easily. Previous, no, go
Also, if you could
previous.
paste the footnote into my DMs, that would be good so I can read it alongside.
For a little bit of context, I should probably also read the.
Hmm.
Oh wait, that isn't. Sorry, that isn't actually the full. Sorry, that isn't actually the full footnote. Hold on, wait. Let me
Yep.
fix it. I forget. I forget that the footnote goes onto the other page, goes
Okay.
onto the next page as well. So let me just
All right.
do
Take
that
your take
real
your time.
quick. And then so what Latour is responding to, I'll go over real quick. The section he says it supposedly concluded that science is a social fiction like all the other social fictions. Um, uh, 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 it supposed critical sociology is what he's going to call it, which
Hmm.
is uh, kind of similar. You can just replace it as like the anti-fetishist, basically.
Yeah.
You could almost do that. It's a bit overly
Well, yeah.
simplistic,
So
but it's like
he talks
you'll get the
about
point.
yeah he talks about it. I think in a footnote here, but also in Has Critique Run Out of Steam, he talks more
Yeah.
specifically about critical sociology, um, which he describes as like the ready-made surface level reading of different sociologists that is then used uh to do like a double denunciation um of specific things that the critical sociologist in question doesn't like.
Yeah.
So it's a specific kind of anti-fetishism, It isn't like
Yes.
it doesn't fully encompass all of anti-fetishism, but it's the kind
Yeah.
of anti-fetishism that he personally would be encountering as somebody who is an anthropologist, a sociologist, that sort of thing. But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But the sentence before the footnote is, it supposedly concluded that science is a social fiction like all other social fictions because it is obviously no longer interested in elaborating a social science and does not grasp the first thing about fiction anyhow. And then the footnote is, I have seen this accusation often, but have never read anyone who had actually stated the argument. Disproving a non-existent position has nonetheless become
somewhat of a
somewhat of a codice industry. See
Mhm.
the book with the apt title by Neretta Corgay, A House Built on Sand, exposing postmodernist myths about science. As usual, the confusion between relativism, anything goes, and relativity is made at a price. As Deleuze said, relativism is not the relativity of truth, but the truth of relation. Relativism, when Latour calls himself a relativist, it is in stand with physics. It is the relativism of physics. The thing that is changing is he makes explicit like comparisons to physics.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay.
it isn't that anything goes because anything
Mhm.
doesn't go. It's very important that anything doesn't go.
Mhm.
Um, but there is still that doesn't mean that the distinction should be between um, the counter to this should be absolutism for him because for Latour one of the lines is there are no universals outside of networks. You only get to this inside of very specific things.
Okay.
That's the only way you can determine universals of any kind.
Hmm. So is
Explain.
he trying to, I guess, is he dissolving, would he say that absolutist versus relativist is just a reformulation of the construction versus true dichotomy that the anti-fetishist is supposedly uh like forcing the choice upon? Like would he say that or not?
Um, I don't know if he would say that, but there is certainly somewhat of an overlap
Hmm.
between the two.
Okay.
Um, I don't know if it's a one to one, but there is certainly an overlap.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Because I'm
so
I'm just asking
so
because yeah, go.
also to kind of explain, um, so a cultural relativist would, instead of placing the power in a separated nature, would instead place it in in an all powerful society,
Hmm.
or I guess because it's cultural relativism, in an all powerful culture, where the Latour doesn't want to do that. He doesn't believe in that. He doesn't.
Hmm.
That's not his thing.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. All right. The reason I'm asking is because like it's always important to see how every thinker uses the term relativist because everybody thinks relativism is something. Um and I for example, right? Like the charge of relativist meaning anything goes is not necessarily what relativists actually believe. Um, it is used that way because it's like shorthand, I guess, for, oh, if you're a relativist, then that means you think that anything goes. That means that you think every belief is as good as every other belief, or every truth is as good as any other. Uh, but strictly speaking, that is not what relativism means at all. It doesn't mean anything goes. Just to uh,
Specifically in that footnote, it is important to
yeah,
note that when he's saying that, it is to counter people. It is to
yes,
counter people who are who, in accusing him of relativism, are saying that. It's
hmm
not necessarily saying his definition. of
Yes.
relativism or even cultural relativism,
Yes. No, I get that.
which
And
he wants to place himself in distinction to.
and that's why I think that that's why I think it's important to differentiate um that's why it's important to understand like what people specifically mean when they talk about relativism, because it can get really thorny really fast. Um I I've tended to call myself a relativist, but in like the style of like a more specific relativist, not the meaning anything goes, but meaning something more specific, which is a little bit more than I can get into right now. But the notion of the factish allows us to transcend the Great Divide, to treat moderns and pre-moderns the same. Uh,
Yes.
yeah, okay, yeah. So interesting. So the Yeah. Allows us the operator that will help it resume its work of comparing, but without losing its way in meanders of cultural relativism and without believing any longer in belief. So I guess in this case, the cultural relativism here is in like his opposition to cultural relativism would be um the idea of a culture as being the the fetish that is being vested with all of this explanatory power. Um, is that what he's taking opposition to here? Um,
Um, what it probably actually
mhm.
is um I would have to see what exactly I wish he would have provided a footnote. That would have been a great example of what he meant when he's responding to cultural relativism in this way. But what I assume it is in trying to um, um, with the best of intentions in trying to get past certain things, um, they
Oh, okay.
the
I see what Pippa is. Okay, so what Pippa says is the cultural relativist says that the two groups have different cultures, therefore different belief practice, morality, etc. Latour instead draws a similarity between them. Okay, interesting. Hmm.
because sorry, I need to. I wanted the reason why I was getting into that was I wanted to explain why
Hmm.
he's doing this. In doing this, you create the Great Divide. You end up reaffirming that. You end up creating the other. Where for Latour, he makes this point in Politics of Nature. Latour doesn't want to do that. Um, there's a line. If he's going to point out the strangeness of another culture, it is to point out his own culture's strangeness. It's there's not a difference in that. He doesn't want to um, um, make exotic in that way himself or another culture.
Okay. So,
There,
okay.
everyone is uh, uh, I don't know how to say. Yeah.
So then I guess how so I guess my worry then is that like are we not just proposing another totalizing vision here? If we say that uh that like all cultures can be analyzed this exact same way, because like I think that um I don't think cultural relativism uh as is often described by people is like a good thing, that like we should just take cultures completely at their word about like this, that, or the other thing. But I think that um there is a reason, for example, that we can talk about like different epistemic practices between cultures. It's obviously an abstraction, but what different cultures take to be a good argument or a good piece of evidence is not necessarily like it's not a fixed thing between different different people. And we can obviously talk about like the extent to which these cultural boundaries are blurring. And we can also then talk about like how do these cultural practices or these epistemic practices that determine what evidence is considered admissible or not. We can talk about like common underlying structures between them. Uh, it, hmm. Is that maybe what he's saying, that like at least in the respect, in a specific respect, there is symmetry, that being the instantiation of these practices, of these factishes, that you can analyze between cultures, and then you can say, well, this factish that this culture has, um you can then talk about the different ways in which it might interact, um but you don't need to propose like a fundamental split between everyone this way. Sorry, that I'm rambling because I'm trying to
Yeah.
like
Um, the reason why he wants to draw similarity is so that one of the reasons is this the symmetry as well is the starting point. It, is how I'm doing. The symmetry is in ant itself, which ant is a mostly descriptive thing. It is mostly describing what what is called what are called states of affairs.
mhm,
There's an essay by John Law that came out fairly recently um, about something, and in it they talk
is that
about
the title
how
of the essay, about something?
no,
Oh,
no.
sorry.
It was about privileging specific kinds of knowledges
Hmm.
over others.
Yeah.
There was this tribe in Norway or Sweden.
Yep.
Um, I think it was Norway, and they were kind of being they had their practices banned because it was said that they were the cause of overfishing. Um, but funnily enough, during this same around this same time beforehand, there was this is a great place to fish salmon,
Hmm.
and so it was a tourist spot, and you can kind of see where this is leading.
Well, yeah.
And there's a specific and there is specific privileging. Um, you start out with the with a with a sort of similarity. This isn't to say that they're the same, but that they aren't radically different, that they aren't fundamentally different, that there isn't the great divide in that way. Um, a lot of this, the notion of symmetry, is in a specific way trying to get rid of the great divide,
Hmm.
which is why, as you will recall, he says, as I said earlier, I think in while you're in DC, um, uh, we have never been modern.
Hmm.
That is to say, radically, not relatively, different from the people of the Gold Coast. We
Yeah,
are, of course, relatively different from the people of the Gold Coast, but not.
but not
There's no
radically.
great
Yeah,
divide.
there isn't
There's
like,
no great divide.
yeah, okay, there isn't like a fundamental distinction here. Um,
Yes.
okay, so it's he's not, I guess, in talking about, in denouncing so-called cultural relativism, he's not saying that you can't uh, talk about the various ways in which different cultures have, um, different epistemic practices, different cultural practices, different understandings of like, like the metaphysics of of the world or whatever. It's just that, um, in differentiating them, you don't want to say that they are absolutely different, um in like a
Yes.
way that is unbridgeable between these two different distinct groups, that you can tease out something that that underlies them, that that being, I guess, like the factish, the simultaneous construction and absolute truth that no culture ever chooses. Um, and indeed, like they never uh they don't have to, because the difference is not intelligible in actual practice. Um, it only becomes intelligible in theory, which is itself also a kind of fetishism, uh, that multiplies the fetishes just in a different sphere, that being like the intellectual sphere of like society or capitalism or whatever else, right? So there's the symmetry is not an absolute symmetry in the same way that
No.
the difference is not an absolute difference.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I'm just making sure I understand, because like I do think, and the reason that it's important to me is because I do think that there is, power in being able to look at alternative forms and the ways that they differ from our current forms, and saying, this is we could be different than we are, and that or that we should be different than we are. And I'm not saying that Ant specifically says that Ant will specifically say that one thing is better than another, right? Because that seems antithetical to his project. But like, as somebody who wants change in society, I want to be able to say that some things are better than others, or to be able to advocate for specific social arrangements over others. And I'm I don't know, like I'm just trying to make sure that I'm not like that in doing so, I'm not like running afoul of Ant in any way, that I'm not uh you know I'm not
You
falling
will
into this
be
exact trap.
you will be happy to know
Hmm.
that I should send you that paper on that. It's a really short paper. It's like only like 11 pages long,
Hmm.
and it has a good reference in it. They link to a Canadian biology, like that's a biology like group that's like doing ant to try to they're like environmentalists. They
Yep.
are like environmentalists. They're like in they do like environmental studies. They're like in biology and stuff like that,
Well, yeah.
and they're one of their specific things is trying to study uh, the environment and talk about the environment in a way that doesn't necessarily delegitimize the practices of the native population.
Hmm.
Um, because I think in that place there is kind of, I think, a sizable native population
Hmm.
where they are. I forget where, but we're in Canada. But I
Yeah.
think that's why.
No, I get that. And like again, and obviously I know that Latour, the man, the person, was, was an environmental activist, especially at the end of his life, right? That he God, that book, the last book he wrote, it's like, if we lose the world, then we lose our souls, or something like that.
If we lose the earth, we lose our soul. Yes,
Yes.
it was literally the last
Yeah.
thing that he ever published, and I have to assume that he was working on it, uh, like
Yeah.
like very close to like the end of his life.
But that, I
Um,
feel like that title alone should tell you that, like, he has like paints a very dire picture, right? Like he's clearly not just aiming to be like, oh, this is, what it is, but I'm not going to say what's good and what's bad. Like, no, he's clearly saying something, uh something normative there, like, so it's I guess what I'm saying is that, like, even if Ant is not necessarily normative, it's not incompatible with a normative outlook. Um, is what I would is what I'm getting from what you're saying.
a lot of the time, okay, so there is a lot of his, obviously this book in itself
Hmm.
is kind of normative.
Yeah.
I think talking about how we need to switch from this way to another.
Yeah.
But Latour throughout this will never ever really say
Hmm.
this is good, this is bad. He won't
Yeah.
break it up like that. He
Yeah.
kind of just prefers to make his point
Hmm.
and like get along with it, and that's how it is. There is almost certainly like an urgency he has in a lot of his writing,
Hmm.
where it's like we need to make this shift, we need to do this, we need to do that.
Hmm.
There is like a very
Yeah.
urgency, and there is also a sense of being the very Catholic man he is. There is
Hmm.
often a sense of failure in his writing. That's kind of a joke. But he often, I think, as part of a push so that people understand that that he knows that in some aspects he hasn't been as successful. He specifically points to the fact that he says like I have failed.
Hmm.
Um, like we have failed. We haven't done as good as we should have done. Like him in his entire field, we need to do better. We need to make these pushes, and it's kind of like a thing he's constantly doing, and in like every book he does it in a new
Hmm.
way, and
Well, yeah, and
it's one of those things.
continue.
No, I'm done. I'm
Okay.
done.
Um. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, because I'm trying to, I guess, the reason I care about this also is because like I'm trying to get to the suitability of this sort of thought for um the research I'm doing on ABA. I have I don't know how much I've talked to you about ABA.
You
Actually,
should
yes.
send me that. You should send me that paper that you said references there,
Right.
and I'll tell you
Yes.
if it's
So
used in
I
Latour.
actually think that, so I would actually say, like, knowing what I know now, I don't think the paper makes good use of Latour. It's literally
Yeah,
just in
many
one,
people don't.
yeah, it's literally just in one paragraph, and like I would never, like, I like reading it. Actually, you know what? Let me just find it. Can I just
It, it's actually insane that out of all the books they cite Factish Gods,
yeah.
kind of.
Well, it's also they so here's what the passage says. This is literally the only paragraph where Latour is mentioned. So it's French philosopher and sociologist Bruno Latour describes facts as a type of modernist fetish object. In We Have Never Been Modern, Latour argues that while moderns believe that science has separated us from our pre-modern past and that fact, quote unquote, speak for themselves, the separation of science from history, culture, and politics means that we have never actually been modern. The emphasis on empiricism in early behaviorism was crucial in establishing a modern progressive identity for Skinner. I can't really comment on what We Have Never Been Modern. Yeah. Well, yeah, so then it's but then here it says in a subsequent book on the modern cult of factish gods, Latour describes the idea of a factish, a hybrid fact fetish that acknowledges that both facts and fetishes afford us what both facts and fetishes afford us while also retaining the artifice of both. I don't know why artifice is being used because it's pretty clearly not an artifice. It is literally it is not an artifice of a fact and fetish. It is like simultaneously the construction and the real. But and then its behaviorism relied on the lexicon of science as an indication of its modernity and inherent progressivism. The quote unquote facts of behaviorism are factishes in the sense that they were most valuable as modernist fetish objects on which cultural fears of ideology could be projected. And this just seems completely wrong and like completely missing the point of what
Yes,
Latour is saying, right?
yes, no,
Like
no, it is,
like
no, it is.
because like
Um,
as cast in this paper, it would seem that they are saying Latour is doing anti-fetishism. It's like actually
yes, yeah,
behaviorism is a
yes,
fetish, but that's not the
or
point,
or
like at all.
or even actually worse, that
Hmm.
Latour is himself a fetishist,
Hmm.
which Latour would reject both because
Yeah.
they're one of the plays he makes is that they're he often has this interesting enough, Sunday has talked about Bergson doing a similar thing.
Hmm.
He often, in his concepts, has this sort of like two concepts are actually one concept, and
Hmm.
they're not really separated in that way. The factish is the combination of the words fact and fetish,
Yep.
but there aren't fact and fetishes and factishes.
Yes.
There are only
No, exactly.
factishes.
Right. It
It
says
is
Latour
one.
describes a hybrid fact and fetish, but it's not a hybrid fact and fetish. It just is
No,
both of them. Like, yeah.
it's one thing.
Hmm.
It is that.
Yeah.
It is a thing. It is a
Yeah.
different thing. It is not the because in doing that you reaffirm the fact fetish distinction, but there isn't one.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, like
The-
I do think, again, even though this paragraph I don't think is worth anything, like it did point me in this direction. I do think you can analyze behaviorism as from the Latourian perspective with respect to, like, even if you're not using it to say like this is like Latour is not going to say this is why behaviorism is bad, but you can say, well, actually, for one, I would say that behaviorism is anti-fetishist. Um, like, it's not just that it, like, as a, or that at least behaviorists are anti-fetishists in the way that they describe other um other kinds of like psychological sciences. So one of the big things in behaviorism is a supposed um what is it? Like, it's an opposition to what they derisively call mentalism, by which uh Skinner meant Skinner being BF Skinner. He meant psychoanalysis, basically, like Freudian psychoanalysis. And he would probably extend that to Lacanian psychoanalysis if he knew who Lacan was, which I'm not sure he ever did know who Lacan was. But
yeah.
point is that he describes this as mentalism, where I think, like, the mind, I guess, is the fetish object that's being erected in this case. And it's like you are attributing powers to the mind, the unconscious, when it's really just you. It's really it's a fetish. But then that's only the first denunciation. The second denunciation is, actually, you are being entirely controlled by, the truth of behaviorism, that being that, like, everything is just like motivational learned behaviors. um and you can analyze it from that perspective, right? But it's not what makes behaviorism uh regrettable, what makes it a bad thing, is not the fact that it has factishes, because every science uses factishes, and in fact every person uses factishes. That um you can't extricate living, even, like Latour seems to think, from the factish. So it's not what makes
Yeah.
behaviorism lamentable is not its use of the factish. It's it would have to be the specific factish that's being invoked, and uh to what end it's being used. And I think that is much more it's much more important. um yeah, I don't know.
I'm honestly really surprised that I'm gonna be honest, I'm honestly kind of surprised that in all the that I can't recall a single like reference that had to do with something like with exploring um something like behaviorism.
Hmm.
Um because it seems like kind of it seems like something almost perfect, I think,
Yeah.
for something like ant to talk about and deal with in a specific way, or even just science studies in general,
Yeah. And
science and technology
if
studies
I
to deal with.
if I ever do something more with this, like, I have had a video idea for about ABA bouncing around in my head for a long time now. Like, if I ever do anything more with this, I think that I could try to do that sort of thing, but it's not going to be in the vein of this paper. Um that that seems to like completely misunderstand what Latour is saying. Like I bet what happened, maybe I'm being way too charitable, but I bet what happened is that this person was talking to their advisor, and either their advisor or someone on their committee or whoever said, "Hey, you should incorporate the thought of Latour into what you're doing," and they had really very little interest in doing so. So they so they kind of like threw together this paragraph in order to have something to show, I guess. Is you know,
Does um yeah, probably. They probably don't care about Ant. Well,
yeah.
they,
Well,
I'm
they
gonna
don't.
be honest. They probably don't care about Ant or science studies in general as
Well,
like a
no.
thing.
I mean, they don't
Because
even mention it,
Latour,
you know.
because Latour is like Latour is a Latour is a sociologist and anthropologist,
Yep.
but within that, he is also doing and setting out a specific philosophy. Within this sense, he is a philosopher, but
Hmm.
he is primarily a sociologist and a anthropologist in like most senses. Like these things come like you can almost say they come first.
Hmm.
Um, and so to focus on Latour, whose his ideas aren't purely theoretical. That's actually because he has actually done field work, but to focus on someone who doesn't. Latour says himself though he doesn't. He's done like a few things, but he hasn't done as much as some other people. He
Hmm.
like doesn't do uh, after lab life in Aramis. He didn't really do groundwork. He hasn't really done groundwork that often as like a thing. Um,
Hmm.
and so there are people, they're much better people, and there's also things that are more related. Isabel Stengers, Donna Haraway might actually be good, and Isabel Stengers too. But there might also be other stuff that I just don't know about, just because I'm
Yeah.
not familiar with the field and like as good as I should be.
Yeah. No, it's
There's
totally
probably
fine.
like even better people you could point to.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, I think that but yes. I think that there but yeah, I'm glad I went on this excursion if only to see that it was like the original point was very wrong when it was being referred to by that paper. But um I do think that I do think I am getting something valuable out of this because specifically because I like being able to talk about the double renunciation with respect to behaviorism in theory versus in practice is I think important. Um, like because specifically because behaviorism, I guess you could say that behaviorism is trying to cast itself as uniquely separate from previous theories of psychology through its anti-fetishism, right? You could say that. And then when you actually look at behaviorism, it has the same structural similarities. It just it has it just keeps the different list of things that it wants to attribute causal power to, right? So
yeah,
I think that's valuable, and I think that I will have something interesting to say in that vein. So I'm glad I'm reading this, and I also have said that it's it's therapeutic in that it's pushing me outside of my comfort zone, which is good. Anyway, let's finish up this section because we kind of got sidetracked there with the thing, but yeah. So by pushing agnosticism to this point, we no longer need to oppose fetishless moderns who unveil before the eyes of blacks or pariahs either an undisguised external reality or the abyss of their own internal representations. We no longer need to mock the moderns who might believe in anti fetishism just as naively as the Gold Coast blacks believed in their fetishes and the old aunts in their shallograms. The moderns, too, have a factish, a fascinating, subtle, sly trickster. Now we need to simply sketch out its form and understand how it works. Um, and then the next section is how to draw the moderns' split factishes. So this is, I guess this next section is going to be more on like what exactly is it that the that like the double repertoire affords the moderns? How does it function in their epistemology and in all that? Um, but yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I am going to stop there because it's been an hour and a half. But Envy, thank you very much for coming on. If you're available next time I stream, I'm not sure when that is, but you are always welcome on. Um, Again, everybody in chat,
Just
if you
shoot me a
haven't already.
message.
Sorry?
I said just shoot me a message
Yep.
whenever you know what day you're streaming. I'll tell you.
All right, cool. And remember, everybody in chat or whoever's watching this later or anything like that, go subscribe to Envy. Uh, yeah, do that.